Thanks everyone for joining us. So in front of me, I've got Richard Youle, who is co-head of private equity at Skadden Arps, and Robert Green, who is a GDL student and a former journalist now looking to pursue a career as a lawyer, and Maria, who is currently studying law at City University, having previously done another degree in political sciences. So what we're going to do is let Richard introduce himself, because I'm sure he'll do a better job than I'll ever do. And then this is a fantastic opportunity for the two students I've got with me to ask Rich some questions. We've got about 10 minutes with him, so use your time wisely, guys. Go on,
Okay,
Rich.
so
Why don't you introduce yourself?
I'm Rich. I'm a partner at Skadden. I've been at Skadden about 3.5 years, something like that. I was formerly a partner at White & Case, and before that, a partner at Linklaters. So I focus on private equity work, hence why I look so tired all the time. And yeah, that's what I do. So I've been practicing in the city for about 20 years now, something like that, and still really enjoying what I do, which is a relief, because if I wasn't enjoying it, this would be a pretty miserable existence, I can tell you.
Sure, but your career into your current career as a partner in a very high-profile US law firm wasn't sort of as straight down the line as other partners, because you started life as a trainee in the regions, didn't you?
Yeah, so I trained at a firm called Stamp Jackson and Proctor in Hull, which was at the time about a 6 or 7 partner firm. So my training contract was conveyancing and personal injury litigation and some matrimonial and some employment and a bit of corporate commercial, but not really at the same level as it is at Skadden Arps, it'd be fair to say. And then just before I qualified, I decided there was no future in litigation, and we was at a litigation firm, so the world was going to pursue a corporate path, which was entirely wrong. But anyway, I decided I'd go and work in Leeds. And at that time, they basically take anybody with a heartbeat, because they were so busy in Leeds, which was really a very thriving second legal centre in the UK. So I went and worked at Eversheds for 2 years. Then I was working opposite a guy called Graham White, who's one of the, if you like, early legends of the private equity scene in the city. Did a deal opposite him, where he famously threw a disclosure letter at me across the table. But I didn't let that stop me. And when I was moving down to London, I gave him a call. He offered me a job, so that was at SJ Berwin, which doesn't really exist anymore. But anyway, and then Graham got headhunted by Linklaters, so I went to Linklaters when I was about probably 3 or 4 years qualified or something like that, and then made partner at Linklaters. Did I think 7 years as a partner there before I joined White and Case.
Wow. Yeah. So a bit up and down, a few manoeuvres here and there, being alongside or opposite, as you say, Graham would have been, a significant moment. How was it like moving from the regions to London, where
I took it gradually anyway, right? So it's not like you went from Stamp Jackson Proctor to Skadden. There was a few steps in the way. I mean, I learned massive amounts at all the firms that I've been at. Probably not so much SJ Berwin, but because I wasn't there very long, because Graham left so quickly. But all the other firms, I mean, the Stamp Jackson Proctor is obviously a different part of the legal kind of community, but the entrepreneurial skills that I learned there working with Stuart Dench, who's one of the senior partners at Stewart's in the city, a litigation focused firm. He's probably the most entrepreneurial partner I've ever worked with. And we also had a great laugh, and just had a fantastic training contract. And you pick up things like you have so much more interpersonal connection with people in firms like that, because like in the personal injury 12 months I did, you had a caseload of 150 personal injury cases. So you're going out in your car, trying to get your petrol expenses because they're skint, going around and meeting people, see if you could sign them up for a no-win, no-fee deal for a rear end shunt in a car or whatever, and trying to make them come to Stamp Jackson and Proctor rather than one of the other firms. You don't learn that in Magic Circle firms. It's just a different way going about things. So, and then Linklaters was I mean, I applied for training contracts at firms like Linklaters. I didn't really know what they were. And I think there was more chance of me going to the moon than what there was of me getting a training contract there. But you just learn how to do things properly, I think, at firms like that, which is certainly at the time. I mean, the US firms have grown so rapidly in the last 10 years or so. Back in the day, they weren't a really credible alternative. You wanted to go to a Magic Circle firm, train properly, and just see how really serious operators go about doing the job. So it's an incredible learning environment, I think, and very, very supportive. I mean, the programs for trainees and the junior lawyers are absolutely amazing. And I was always quite jealous, actually, of the cohorts of trainees, because it's like 60 a year, right, in 2 intakes. And a good mate of mine, Alex Woodward, who was my next door neighbour when I was in Hull, actually. He's a partner at Linklaters, but I saw him come through because we were just good personal friends. Saw him come through, and he's got his like 20 mates from his intake, and that's gone all the way through the careers, and it's fantastic culturally, I think.
No, I, as some of you may know, trained at Linklaters, so you're right. That's one of the things that I really enjoyed about being in a firm with quite a large trainee intake, and some of those trainees that I started with are still my friends now. God, I dread to say this 20 years later. Anyway, Robert, you had a question, didn't you, about Rich's move from Leeds to London?
Yeah, and thanks so much, Richard, for sharing that. My question was, you said as you went from a regional firm to a large city firm, you also went to a comprehensive school. And I know you spoke about not getting a first, for example, in your law degree. So I was wondering if you've ever experienced imposter syndrome, and if you have, how you've overcome that.
Definitely. I didn't know it was called imposter syndrome back then, but I certainly didn't think I was probably operating at the right level to, in particular, Linklaters, to be at Linklaters. And I walked in there. I mean, first of all, it's massive, compared just like as a physical thing. Second of all, the kind of work that they're doing there is so high level. And at that point, I understood some of it and not all of it. I think one of the good things, if you're going to have a chip on your shoulder, like what I've got, is I have one on both shoulders, so it sort of balances you out. But I think what I learned was that a lot of when you're feeling that you have when you go into a place is more in your head than anywhere else. If you go in and you work hard and you're prepared to learn and make yourself indispensable to teams, you can make a huge difference. And if you look fortunate enough to identify people that you get on well with, who take an interest in you, then they will train you and they will help you kind of live and on the job. And if you've got your own kind of self-motivation to improve, then I think you can work your way through imposter syndrome. I mean, my academic record is terrible, but I know I'm not thick. But I sort of realised I wasn't thick a bit later on. And certainly when I first walked through the doors at Linklaters, I thought there's no way I'm gonna make it here. And I saw the kind of army of senior associates ahead of me and thought there's no way I'm gonna make it through those people. They really know what they're doing. I think you have to use your strengths, of course, but you also have to use your weaknesses to say, okay, I'm going to work on those, and I'm going to and use the difference that you've got. So I mentioned the kind of personal skills and interpersonal skills that I learned at Stamp Jackson and Proctor. I mean, I've used that all the way through my career and still do. Probably my best attribute is the ability to get on with people. Yeah. You get on with people, then you learn actually when you're negotiating, it's much easier just to get on with people and agree things in a nice, friendly, interested way than it is to start chucking disclosure letters across the table and shouting and bawling. And if you need to throw in the headbutt, then you do, but it should be absolute, last resort. So some of the skills that I learned at Stamp Jackson Proctor, I still use them. I use them every day.
I agree with you, Rich. I think being a decent person and being able to build long-term, positive and meaningful relationships goes such a long way. Of course, the technical stuff has to be there as well. At what point did you start believing in yourself then? When did that light switch get turned on, knowing that you can do this? Because it is intimidating going into a large city law firm. I suffered imposter syndrome and I was thinking, God, what am I doing here? Everyone seems so intelligent. And although I was on top of the world having bagged a city training contract, I also felt that I didn't perhaps deserve to be there.
Yeah, well, I think I don't think there was a given day. A few different things happen, right? If a client rings you with work, I mean, to when it first started happening and to this day, it's still the best feeling, on the job. So if people are ringing you and voting with their wallets, then you kind of think I must be doing something all right. I got a fantastic piece of advice from Ian Bagshaw, which was, it's not necessarily knowing how to do something, it's knowing how to go about doing something. So breaking things down into small tasks and building them back up, which is what we do. We have massive projects that you break down to as smaller pieces as you possibly can and then work them back up together. So I think once I realized that, but also you see yourself improve, right? And now when I have meetings or now Zooms or whatever, and someone's got a problem, I've got no idea what it is. You've been doing it that long, the experience just enables you to put things into quite straightforward boxes and processes. So I don't think there was a given day really, Husnara. It's just over a process and a period of time. You've got to believe in yourself, right? You've got to get over your imposter syndrome. It's fine to have it. Use it to drive you on.
Yeah.
Use your differences, yeah, and exploit them and develop them. But you have to get over yourself as well. You're there. You're getting paid. You're doing it. Shut up, basically.
And what I say to students and trainees alike is that you're not the finished product. So don't expect to turn up knowing everything, because that's the whole advantage of a career in law, in that you're constantly learning.
When are you ever the finished product, though? If the day that you think you are is the day that you stop learning and you stop developing, and I don't think anyone wants that. And like, I look at Scott Simpson in our place, and he's like such an amazing listener. He listens to what other people are doing, and listens to how they're going about doing it. And he's like a legend of like global M&A. Do you know what I mean? What can he learn from me? Well, you would think not very much, but he's very interested to hear what I've got to say and what I'm seeing and how we're going about doing things. And I think that's, my dad always used to say, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. basically telling me to stop talking, which is fair enough.
Absolutely. I think one skill I've had to become so much better at is listening, and avoiding interrupting people when they're sort of mid-flow. So we've talked about people skills, we've talked about having that self-belief and taking an interest in your own sort of growth and development. Maria, you had a question about skills as well, didn't you? Go on.
Yes. Thank you for this, Richard. So my question was, in your view, what are the key skills or attributes that law students should have, that students that want to pursue a career in corporate law? Yeah,
so there's a few different ways of answering this one. I think ultimately you have to be organized. If you're not organized, you've got absolutely no chance, because there's so many different each task, you break it down, as I just mentioned, into subtasks, but they have to be organized and come together at a given moment in a wider project management context. I think organization, which is a pretty basic skill, right? It's not like you need a degree to be organized. Writing out what you're going to do, planning your day and structuring your day, and just thinking through what the priorities are, what you can do later, is really important. I think also having a mentality that says, I'm going to get as much done as I possibly can to start the next day with as clean a desk as I possibly can is hugely important, because you're in a client service business, and there's going to be demands coming up live through a day anyway. So you might sit there at 8 in the morning, you've got it all perfectly planned out, but by 9, it's all gone to hell in a handcart. So you can forget about it. So I think clearing your desk, being organized and structured. I mean, obviously, and my golden rules for my team are, you have to be a great technical lawyer. City lawyers, non-city lawyers actually charge clients a fortune. So if you're not really good at what you do, and you're not interested in being really good at what you do, you might as well forget about it, because you're charging for a Porsche, but you're driving around in a Ford Fiesta doesn't really work. So you have to be technically excellent. You have to have an incredible work ethic. It's deeply unpleasant, the hours that people are required to do. I noticed that Goldman Sachs article last week, the weather on about capping people's hours at 80 a week. But people routinely work those hours and make those personal sacrifices. So you've got to have that work ethic inside. You have to have the drive and the desire to get better. So know-how, your own know-how is one thing, but the know-how of your team and being prepared to take that on. We signed a deal overnight, Tuesday night, and yesterday morning about 8 o'clock, we were trying to sort something out with a fantastic associate in my team. And we just took 15 minutes to actually train on the job, how to think about the particular piece of work that he was doing. So for me, I know that he is going to be amazing. And hopefully with that 15 minutes, he will see how he can do it better next time. So like, you're on the job and off the job training and interest in other people is huge. I think the fourth thing is then marketing or business development. You're just a big network in a team. We've got a big team and we've got an even bigger network. You can times it by 4 or 5. So encouraging people to pursue their business development. I think Graham said to me years ago, on every deal, take 1 contact. Doesn't matter if it's a client, a lawyer on the other side, an investment banker, someone at the accountants, whatever, take a contact and stick with that person, and you'll never know where they're going to go. And I think like my last thing is, you've got to enjoy it, because as mentioned, it is quite hard work. And if you're not enjoying it, then why bother? Why make all the sacrifices if you're not enjoying it? It's really not worth it. You know, everyone needs money to pay the rent or whatever and put food on the table, and there is that level where you have to work. But I think that this commitment you don't have to do. So if you're going to make this commitment, sacrifice X, Y, and Z, then don't do that if you're not enjoying it. It's really not worth it. If it's not for you, it isn't. But you get such fantastic choices, right? If you do a couple of years in a Linklaters or a Skadden and loads of other example and fantastic firms, you'll have options. You know, and that's the beauty of the career in the law for me, be that in-house, private practice, you know, whatever, and the training takes you, I think really stays with you, and that structure and organisation is critical all the way through.
Can I ask one question? No, that's fine. Both Maria and Robert will have are lucky enough to have some experience with the US law firm. So Robert is actually doing a VAC scheme with Skadden, and then Maria is doing an insight day with Latham. How do you tell US firms apart? I know and you know, but if you were to advise students sort of how to do that, because I think for so many aspiring lawyers, being able to differentiate between different firms can be such a challenge.
Yeah, I mean, I think you should. Lawyers. I think you should differentiate probably in three ways with how I think about it. First of all, what are you in? What kind of law are you interested in doing? You know, and are those firms any good at it or not? Right, so that's like first differentiation is just so if you took Skadden and Latham, for example, we're broadly doing the same things, but in different ways. So they would equalise on that one, I think. I think then the second thing is a cultural one, and every firm has its own culture and its own way of going about doing things. And I'm not sure whether when you go into a firm you like a culture, or rather over time you assimilate towards that culture. I don't know which way around it really works. You know, probably both actually, but having a feel for the place, and does it feel like a place where you can relax and enjoy being, you know, and feel like it's a good place to basically spend 7/8 of your life, I think is critically important. And I think then the third thing is how does that firm get behind you as a person? You know, how much do they invest in you? How much are they going to take you as an individual and think about your development and your client opportunities and your work type opportunities, and to what extent they can zero in on you? Because at the end of the day, you are part of a team, but you're also an individual, and it is about you and your career and, you know, how you're developing and progressing.
Without doing the hard sell, what's the culture like in your team and beyond?
I think the beauty at Skadden is that we know exactly what we're supposed to be doing as a bunch of partners, and there's absolutely no secrets. There's no like majesty of title at Skadden. There's no majesty of admin. No one's on a work creation exercise of, you know, organization and business planning and, you know, whatever else. We're hired, or, you know, I was hired to go and win private equity work and do it well on a profitable basis and get more of it. It's really that simple. So if people say to me, well, what are your targets for this year? It's like to do more of the same, and to, you know you're going to work incredibly hard to do it. And on the Skadden stats, partners work harder than associates. And I thought that said it all, because to me, if you're lucky enough to be in my position where you earn a fortune and you're busy, then why should you sit around doing nothing? And I felt the environment in more European headquartered firms compared to US firms, one of the fundamental differences is how hard partners work. And they're supposed to be your lead out guys, right? Or your lead out players. They're the ones who are supposed to be charging from the front and bringing the team with them. And so that to me is critically important. We also have an incredibly flat structure, I think, in terms of open door. Everybody's important. Everybody's working hard. We are a team, and then it's the respect thing, right? I mean, if you don't have respect for people and treat them properly on a day-to-day basis, you've got no chance at Skadden. It's just not going to work. So I think that's how that'd probably be the hallmarks of it. But it's all wrapped in, you know, quality legal excellence, you know, wanting to develop, wanting to do better. And I think Skadden, like 70 years ago, whatever, when it was formed, viewed itself as kind of the outsider firm. And I think that's still there as well, never accepting where you are, fighting every day to be where you are and to be where you're going to be the next day, the next month or whatever. And I like that. It's the culture really suits me. I think when I joined, I think Eric Friedman said to me, there's two things about being successful at Skadden. The first one is working really hard, which is like big surprise. And the second one is help. You always help if someone asks. and they're the two things that drive the place. I think. But it's interesting. I think when you see what's happened in the last year, particularly with things like Black Lives Matter, I think hit the firm hard because it was just such a strong and powerful issue at the time in the US especially. And I think the doubling down that the firm's done in the last year on issues like that and respect and all that is absolutely fantastic.
Great. No, that's a really nice summary and very useful as well. Robert and Maria, any closing remarks other than to say thank you for Richard for his time?
Well, I mean, yeah, I will obviously say thank you. And this is the second event that I've seen you at, Richard, and both times it's been really insightful. I'm definitely looking forward to hopefully working alongside you at some point at Skadden. But it does sound from everything I've read and seen and what you spoke about that the firm really is pushing, as you said, that kind of progressive, inclusive culture. And I think that's really important, especially in the legal sector, because I don't think it's a sector that's traditionally known for being very inclusive. And I definitely feel as a gay person that was a thing that I was hesitant about converting to law, was just that conservative aspect of the legal sector. So it's really refreshing to hear that. Thank you.
And how that's changed in history has just moved at such a pace, I think, in the last 24 months probably, on all manner of different issues. And it's just it's so refreshing. It really is, that people can come in, be themselves, knowing that they've got a pretty hard job to do, but also knowing that there's a pretty fantastic opportunity in front of them. And people's preferences should have nothing to do with that, provided that they're going to knuckle down and try and do the best they can on the job.
How about you, Maria? Anything you wanted to add?
Yes, obviously, thank you for everything you've shared with us. It's really insightful. And I've also find your story very inspiring.
That's very kind. It wasn't really, when you look back on it, it looks quite an interesting story. At the time, it really didn't feel like that at all. I loved everywhere I was. I always really enjoyed it every step of the way. I always felt like I was progressing, which was really, really important to me. So no one would ever design to do it that way, but equally I wouldn't change it either. I just learned so much on the path.